Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's top topics of November 10th, 2021. Let us see the list of topics that I will be discussing with you today. First and foremost, yesterday's video could not be released because there is a slight changes that I will be doing in the video, the slides and all that. It's taking a lot of time, and also the publishing is also being very late. So just working on that. So trying to just try to publish the videos as early as possible. So coming back to the topics, first one is about Chennai flooding, where the Madras High Court had called up the state government and asked it what it was doing regarding the waterlogging, as heavy rainfall is being predicted by the Met Department. And also, there is a news that the Chennai flooding problem will not be solved even in the next 10 years. And let us see what are the reasons for this. So, Indo-Pak fishermen issue is another editorial in the Hindu, along with the above, which speaks about the new problems that are now uh, a new issue that has come up in the Indo-Pak relations, that is the firing and killing of Indian fishermen by the Pakistani Maritime Security Agency along the international maritime boundary line between the two countries, which has been criticized, and already India-Pakistan relations are on a low, with Pakistan not attending the regional security meeting on Afghanistan also. Now, the state of policing in India is report 2019. This is very important from the internal security point of view, because police play a very important role in the criminal justice system and also providing citizens. They are the first point of access for any citizen in the country and this at the state level when they face any crisis. Why is the Ministry of Home Affairs tasked to monitor the foreign funds of NGOs, asked the Supreme Court, and why it is not being given to the Ministry of Finance? So this is another news. Then in Supreme Court, Kerala bats for a new dam at the Mullaperiyar, fearing that the incessant rains will cause a disaster where the low-lying areas might be flooded and it will lead to loss of lives and property. So Kerala is now calling for a new dam, giving the example of an Australian dam which supplies water to Perth. The other issue is AP and Odisha to work closely to resolve the border issues. Then the other one is hundreds of migrants trapped in Belarus, Poland standoff. And the last one is China exports warship to Pakistan to be deployed in the Indian Ocean. This is another news coming up at a time when India is discussing you have the naval symposium, conclave, the Goa Maritime Conclave, which is happening and discussing maritime security, which is the most important for India as it sits at the head of the Indian Ocean. So moving on, Chennai flooding. The Madras High Court said that it is a pity that half of the year we long for water and the rest of the year we are flooded or die for water, as the area in Tamil Nadu faces water crisis in summer and drought-like conditions. Now, the court was hearing a plea for clearing of encroachments. The court questioned the state on what it was doing with the funds that the centre was sending it through the Smart Cities mission and what they are doing to deal with the waterlogging problem in Chennai. Now, the Chennai Corporation was pulled up for waterlogging, and there has been a similar editorial given in Hindu, for which I have given the main points for which will help you write an answer, and it is posted in my Telegram channel with the same name of the academy name. There has been a red alert sounded by the Met Department as rains have been forecasted, which will be heavier than 2015, when the city faced the worst flooding problem and the heaviest year in almost 100 years. So there is a news being doing rounds that the Chennai problem will not be solved even in another 10 years. And why the environmental analysis say this? Let us see. So the Chennai metropolitan region has a flat terrain and it is very close to the sea level. Agriculture activity in the region required and prompted the construction of thousands of large yet shallow lakes. Over the years, the city grew in size and many places expanded into low lying areas and wetlands. The latter, that is the wetlands, are closer to the sea level, meaning that the water that accumulates here also tends to stagnate, thereby causing a flood like situation. In the same time, the local government was converting the floodplains of the Adyar River and other streams into urban areas to accommodate residential, commercial, industrial activities. Today, it would be impossible to vacate many of these premises. Natural water bodies and wetlands like the Palakiran, Palakiranai marsh can act as buffers, but the union state and the local governments are not allowing the water to drain anywhere. The existing built up area has also rapidly become more dense, which means that less water penetrates into the ground as well. Designs and construction of city streets and stormwater drains are really of poor quality and they cannot help the city at all. So therefore there is a need for wider and more bigger capacity stormwater drains and city streets. Any government could also have repurposed and re-engineered the artificial lakes that once served the agricultural lands to serve as buffers. However, many of them have been lost or contain a lot of sewage. As such, they either have low capacity to act as buffers or their engineering parameters do not fit the bill. Now, neither the Chennai City Master Plan nor the City Disaster Management Plan addresses these issues in a scientific manner. The Disaster Management Plan has some standard operating procedures. They are not rooted in what the scientists know about the city water resources, and as a result, there have been no further detailed location specific action plan nor any roadmaps to achieve them. The solution to the Chennai flooding problem lies therefore in better governance because for the last 6 years the city has had no mayors or councillors, unelected officials are unaccountable to the city's people and therefore the people's concerns are unaddressed. This even affects also policy making to deal with the flooding or the waterlogging problem because this is related to the Chennai Metropolitan Corporation functions and powers. Revamping street designs, scientifically designing and building stormwater bodies, maintaining both properly could cost crores of rupees and many years of groundwork. Even if we start today, we will not be achieve it. But the municipal government reforms are most calling for if the urban flooding has to be dealt with. So these are the reasons why the Chennai is facing floods whenever it rains very heavily, unplanned urbanization, building in the floodplains, which is a major problem, capturing of water bodies, lack of proper stormwater drains, etc. So, this will help you to write a very good answer for the reasons why cities face a flooding problem, and examples of Chennai can be given. So, these reasons can be given along with what are the steps that can be taken to mitigate the problems. So, especially scientific, proper planning, governance, faster implementation is the need of the hour for the city to deal with such problems whenever it rains heavily. Thus, it is said that this is the reason why Chennai's flooding issue cannot be solved or won't be solved in the next 10 years. Now, the Indo-Pak fishermen issue is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. Now, a fisherman from Thane in Maharashtra was killed when Pakistan Maritime Security Agency opened fire. Another fisherman was injured and is being treated in Gujarat. So last year in February, there was a spurt in the number of fishermen getting caught by Pakistan in high seas. India asked the Pakistan forces for restraining on unprovoked firing and conduct an inquiry into the issue. So, the bilateral relations between India and Pakistan are currently at its low, and the recent firing by the security agencies on the Indian fishermen will further strain the ties. Fishermen often get caught in the fluctuating fate of bilateral relations between the countries, which is now at a low. The fishermen were killed off the Gujarat coast on November 7, and this is the first such killing in the last 6 years, though conflicts over fishing rights are not infrequent. India has termed Pakistan action as deplorable and in contravention with all the established international practices and bilateral understandings. If you see the extent of the fishermen problem, according to the Gujarat government, 345 fishermen from the state were lodged in Pakistan jails as on December 2020. In April 2020, Pakistan forces opened fire on two boats off the Gujarat coast. And in 2019, they sunk an Indian boat in which 6 to 7 fishermen were rescued. According to the National Fisher Workers Forum, there are 558 fishermen in the Pakistani jails, 74 from Pakistan in Indian prisons. The forum calculates that 1200 Indian fishing vessels are in the Pakistan custody. Only 295 of the 558 prisoners could have their nationality verified, therefore making it more and more difficult for the rest to reach India. In 2007, both countries formed a joint judicial committee comprising 8 judges, 4 from India and Pakistan, to facilitate exchange of civilian prisoners. The mechanism has been defunct since 2013, and attempts to revive it in 2018 did not bear fruit. It is a tragedy that ordinary people could end up in foreign prison while trying to earn their livelihood. So, this is a humanitarian crisis along the border of India. Civilians along the international border often get caught in the dispute between countries, and India also has such hotspots on the land and sea. Now, India-Sri Lanka maritime border and the fishermen issue is one issue between India and Sri Lanka. Also, many Indian villages along the borders of Myanmar and Bangladesh become theatres of conflict, and the communities often find it very difficult to reconcile with international borders that divide economic and social activities. Pakistan has sponsored violence also in India across its borders, and we know that in 2008, on September 11th, the terrorists had used the sea route to enter the country. Therefore, now India and Pakistan must consider this as a humanitarian crisis and work towards resolving it, and both countries should avoid any escalation in the tension on the latest incident. Now, another important news is the State of Policing report has been published by Common Cause and Lokniti Program Center for Study of Developing Societies. The idea is to offer policy-oriented insights into the condition in which the Indian police works. Now, the policemen are the most important point of access for the crisis when the person faces any crisis, and therefore it is very important to ensure that they are manned with proper infrastructure, resources, and working conditions. Now, this report is very important, and this is the first series where I will be covering the next chapters in the coming up videos on a daily basis. So, in this today's video, I will be discussing the structural analysis of policing in India in this report. Following are the important key findings of this chapter. Now, it says that police in India. So these are the important points about the police in India works at 77% of its sanctioned strength, or just 3 by 4th of its required capacity, meaning there are more vacancies to be filled. Vacancies in the senior ranks are higher than the vacancies in the constabulary ranks. This is despite the fact that only 2 states, West Bengal and Bihar, have the ratio of constabulary to the senior officers as per the Padmanabhaiah Committee. Now, recommendations. Thus, the 4 constabulary personnel per officer. In all other states, the number of constables per officer is much higher. Over 5 years, on an average, 6.4% of the police force have been provided in-service training. Senior police officers are much more likely to receive in-service training than the constable level personnel. Across 22 states, 70 police stations do not have wireless devices, and 214 police stations do not have access to telephones. 24 police stations have access to neither wireless nor telephones. On an average, the police stations in India have 6 computers per police station, but states like Assam and Bihar have an average of less than 1 computer per police station. Representation of SC/STs and women in the police is poor, with huge vacancies in reserved positions. Also, about 240 police stations across the 22 states have no access to vehicles. So, this shows the large number of vacancies and also the infrastructure gaps in the policing system, which calls for urgent implementation of reforms and also resources so that these backdrops can be fulfilled, so that the police personnel are able to function properly and ensure that the rule of law is implemented, especially during crisis situation. So infrastructure and especially technology during these times is the most important, and the police have to be equipped with these on an urgent basis. So, why is the Ministry of Home Affairs tasked to manage the foreign fund of NGOs? Asked the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court asked the government why the Ministry of Home Affairs is tasked to keep an eye on the inflow and subsequent outflow of foreign funds for the NGOs. It was hearing a plea which was challenging the Foreign Contribution Regulations Law 2020, to which amendments have been made recently. So the petitions argue that the amendments severely restricted the use of foreign funds by NGOs for the activities transfer. However, the government said that according to the intelligence input, it was shown that foreign funds entering India were used to fund activities that are destabilizing the national peace and security. The inputs even indicated that money was used to train the Naxals. Government said that people at the helm of these organizations should be known, and the MHA was best placed to do that, and therefore the FCRA and the NGOs monitoring has been given to the MHA rather than the Ministry of Finance. Identification of recipients of foreign funds were known via the Aadhaar system, which was recently implemented, said the government. So it was noticed that before the amendments came, only a small portion of foreign funds were actually being used by the NGOs for their registered objectives, like for any program like education, social work, etc. And now the amendments have helped the government to keep a watch and ensure that the NGOs are getting and spending the foreign contribution only for definite programs which are spelled out in the Articles of Association. So the government has also made it clear that if the NGOs are working for a good cause, then they should not be worried about the transparency and accountability that has been brought in by bringing amendments to the Foreign Contribution Regulatory Act. And this can be supported on the government part, because transparency and accountability is very important, especially when it comes to finance and using of the foreign contribution for the specific causes which is intended in the Articles of Association of the NGOs. So let us see some of the amendments that the government has brought about in the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Now, one of the first amendment is that it prohibits certain persons from accepting foreign contribution. So this include election candidates, editor or publisher of a newspaper, judges, government servants, member of any legislature, political parties, etc. The bill adds public servants as defined under the IPC. Public servants include any person who is in the service or payment of government or remunerated by the government for performance of any public duty. The second amendment is with regard to transfer of foreign contribution. Under the Act, foreign contribution cannot be transferred to any other person unless such a person is also registered to accept the foreign contribution or has obtained a prior permission. The bill amends this and prohibits transfer of foreign contribution to any other person. Now the next amendment is about Aadhaar for registration. The bill adds that any person who is seeking prior permission and registration or renewal of registration must provide Aadhaar number of all its office bearers, directors, or key functionaries in an identification document. In case of foreigner, they must also provide a copy of passport and overseas citizenship of India card for identification. Now, the bill amends this to state that a foreign contribution must be also. The bill amends the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act to say that the contribution must be received only in an account designated by the bank as FCRA account in the State Bank of India, and that too the New Delhi branch as notified by the central government. So this is another amendment. These amendments aim at bringing the transparency and accountability into the functioning of NGOs, and this can be a possible mains question because this has made news and there's still the plea is pending before the Supreme Court challenging the amendment. So it is to see what the Supreme Court is going to say on these challenges. The next is that in Supreme Court, Kerala bats for a new dam at the Mullaperiyar. Now the Kerala government has made a strong case in the Supreme Court to decommission the 126-year-old deteriorated Mullaperiyar Dam operated by Tamil Nadu and build a new one, saying that climate change, erratic and heavy rainfall, floods are making a spectre of catastrophe real and near, and therefore Kerala's affidavit coincides with the red alert issued to Chennai following the torrential rains now recently. The dam, Mullaperiyar Dam, is a masonry dam on the confluence of the Mullayur and the Periyar River in Idukki district of Kerala. It was constructed between 1887 and 1885 and it is operated and maintained by Tamil Nadu. The catchment of the dam lies entirely in Kerala. The state of Kerala had referred to the Uttarakhand floods known as the Chamoli disaster of February 2021, mainly attributed to climate change in the environments of the Nanda Devi National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Kerala also took the example of Victoria Dam of Australia and how it was decommissioned and then provided water to Perth. The weak dam, says Kerala, will affect the life and property of 50 lakh people residing below the Idukki Dam. As the dam is situated in seismic zone 3, a new dam should be commissioned, says Kerala. Now the government of Tamil Nadu the government of Tamil Nadu has been constantly requested to take action on increasing the discharge through the spillways and to tunnel so as to maintain the required water level, which was provided by the supervisory committee recently at 138 feet, which is not being done by Kerala. Along with this, as a warning, the United Nations report was published in 2021 said that the dam was identified as one among the world's big dams which need to be decommissioned and for being situated in a seismically active area with significant structural flaws and poses a risk to 3.5 million people if the dam were to fail. So this should be taken as a warning, and especially if it is not decommissioned, at least restoration and repair work should be taken on a fast mode so that the lives and properties of people can be saved without waiting for too long, and the level of the water has to be reduced by the Tamil Nadu government, keeping in mind the humanitarian concerns and rather than keeping politics and in mind. So this is what is about the Kerala bats for new dam at Mullaperiyar. The other is an interstate issue which is very important in your GS paper 2, federal issues, interstate issues. So AP and Odisha now have decided to set up an institutional mechanism to deliberate on a host of interstate disputes, including the long pending water dispute issue over the construction of the Niradi barrage over the Vamsadhara river. Now, both sides have decided to resolve the contentious issues, which is a good news in various fields of water resources, boundary, energy, and left wing extremism. They have decided to work in cooperation to solve the issues amicably. The disputes are regarding the Kotia group of villages, the Niradi barrage, The Janjavati Reservoir, the Polavaram Water Project, the release of water for the Bahuda River, and the mutual NOCs for the Balimela and the Upper Seleru in the energy sector. Now, the Odisha government had challenged in 2017 the orders of a tribunal which allowed Andhra Pradesh government to construct a Niradi barrage across the river, with AP is seeking the cooperation of Odisha for construction of this Niradi barrage across the Vamsadhara river. Now, the Odisha government challenged these orders, which allowed the Andhra Pradesh government to construct this barrage. Under phase 1, the Gota barrage was constructed, and now under phase 2, the Niradi barrage will be constructed. But Odisha government has been opposing the project as it would leave hundreds of acres of many farmlands in the Rayagada and Gajapati districts submerged. The Vamsadhara river originates in the Kalahandi district of Odisha and joins the Bay of Bengal at Kalingapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. While 150 kilometers of the river lies in Odisha, 82 kilometers flows in Andhra Pradesh. The water dispute led to the formation of the Vamsadhara Water Disputes Tribunal in 2010. The tribunal allowed the AP government to construct the barrage and asked Odisha to provide land to AP for the same, while Odisha did not do, and this caused a conflict between the two states. The two states also discussed the Janjabati and Polavaram projects, which have become a major source of dispute between Andhra and Odisha. The two have also discussed about the Janjabati and the Polavaram projects. So, though Andhra Pradesh plans to use 4 TMC of water from the Janjabati river to irrigate 24,000 acres in the Vizianagaram, Odisha has been objecting to it, saying that several tribal villages will be submerged because of this Janjabati river project. Polavaram project, which is under construction on the Godavari river in Andhra Pradesh, is also being opposed by Odisha, saying that it will lead to submergence and displacement of several villages in the state. The two ministers also discussed the dispute over the villages in the Kontia Gram Panchayat of Koraput district of Odisha. These include disputes over the bordering villages. Now, the two chief ministers said that the states will also set up a chair for Odia and Telugu languages in the B.R. Ambedkar University, Srikakulam, and the Behrampur University, respectively. Besides appointing of language teachers in the school in border districts of the two states, supplying of books and conducting language examination will be taken up to promote brotherhood among the two states. So this is an example of amicably solving the interstate issues of AP and Odisha, the issues and how the two states are working on promoting brotherhood and solving them. So the next important news is about China exports a warship to Pakistan, and this comes at a time when the Goa Conclave on Maritime Security is already discussing the issues of rising naval power, especially and providing of warships and other equipment to Pakistan and its activities in the Indian Ocean. Now, the China has delivered a largest and the most advanced warship to Pakistan as it seeks to increase as Pakistan seeks to beef up its navy in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. It is designed and built by the China State Building Corporation Limited, and this frigate is named as PNS Tugril. This PNS Tugril is the first hull of the 4 frigates being constructed for Pakistan Navy, and the vessel is an advanced and highly capable platform with enormous surface to surface, surface to air, and underwater firepower. Besides extensive surveillance potentials, it is equipped with the state of the art combat management, electronic warfare system, and self defense capabilities. The frigate is largest and the most advanced warship China has ever exported. So China already shares all-weather strategic ties with Pakistan, and Pakistan has emerged as a biggest and it has emerged as a biggest weapon supplier for the Pakistani military. Now, besides the advanced naval ships, China is also partnering with the Pakistan Air Force to build the JF-17 Thunder fighter aircraft. Observers say that the military cooperation in the recent years is focused more on which China has gradually stepped up its naval presence in the Indian backyard in the Indian Ocean. Besides this, the first military base in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa in Indian Ocean, China has acquired Pakistan's Gwadar port in Arabian Sea, which connects the Chinese Zhejiang province by land to the Chinese-Pakistan economic corridor. Observers say that the military cooperation is focused on increasing the naval power in the Indian Ocean, and also this has been a cause of concern for India, which is also being discussed at the Goa conclave. So this is about the China Pakistan military cooperation, and how China, on the pretext of helping Pakistan, is also increasing its naval power in Indian Ocean. So the next news is about hundreds of migrants have been trapped in the Belarus-Poland standoff. Now, Poland and other EU states accuse Belarus of encouraging the migrants and refugees, who are mostly from the Middle East, Afghanistan, Africa, to cross in for as a revenge that the Western sanctions have been placed on Minsk, that is the capital of Belarus. Now, Belarus, which is backed by Russia, denies engineering the migrant crisis and blames European powers and the United States for the plight of people stranded at the border. There are a lot of conversations taking place across Europe now and at the higher levels of echelons about how to deal with this crisis. So this brings me to the end of the topics for this day. I shall meet you all tomorrow with another new list, and maybe in another format, and also earlier posting of videos. Until then, bye bye.